Welcome back to another question here, or rather two questions on examprep.ai. We are going over PP&E, property, plant, equipment, fixed assets, however you want to refer to it, but this is some good stuff. Depreciation is going to be heavy here. Let's jump right in. So the question asks, on what date should the depreciation expense begin? Generally for these questions, I'll say what date makes sense. What date was the date like that they would start using the machine and that it would, in theory, start wearing down? Let's see. The company issued a purchase order on December 15th, year one. All right, that is not going to be our answer. December 15th, that's when you put the purchase order in. You don't have it. There's no need to start depreciating it then. It wouldn't make sense to do it. And it costs $100,000, which that's important for calculating depreciation expense. However, we're just asking the date here, so not too important. The capital equipment was shipped from the vendor on December 31st, year one. So is the shipping date important? You tell me. And then we also have a receipt date. Now, you might be thinking, is this FOB shipping point, destination? Both of those are going to be completely irrelevant. It is going to be the date placed into service, because think about it. You could buy it and then receive it and then hang on to it for about 3 years before it ever starts pumping out goods or products or whatever, if it's a machine that produces your product. But it wouldn't be depreciated because it's sitting around. It's not being used up. It's not getting closer to the end of its life. The equipment was installed and placed in service February 1st, year two. I'm going to go with February 1st, year two. Final answer. When does it make sense? It makes sense when it's placed in service, ready to go, and being used up. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Let's move on to the next one. Now, next up, the company should record its acquisition of the land in its financial statements at a value of what? Now, here we have property, plant, and equipment. And in this case, it's land, so it's property. And what goes into its depreciable base? What gets capitalized and adds to its full value? Let's see. A corporation issued debt to purchase 10 acres of land for development purposes. Expenditures related to this purchase are as follows. So here are our costs incurred in order to get the land, but are we going to include all of them? I don't know. We'll see. Let's figure it out. First, we start with purchase price. Now, that one's pretty straightforward in the sense of, yeah, sure, what you pay for it is important. Also, you couldn't get any of these answers without it. So I'm going to include purchase price. Also going to pull up a little graphic for you right here. Well, what does this indicate? This indicates that if a cost is necessary to get the asset ready for its intended use, if it increases the usefulness or if it increases any of that, it's going to be included in your depreciable base or your capitalizable base. Now, real estate taxes in arrears. These, if you are not familiar with what that is, those are real estate taxes that were owed by the property before you bought it. This is going to be now your problem, your problem that you bought the land now. And are those necessary to get the land ready for its intended use? Well, I would say so, because if you don't pay them, the government's going to come after you, and you don't want to mess with the government. It's not fun. Don't recommend it. Not saying I have personal experience with that, but I wouldn't recommend it. All right. Debt issuance costs. Now, this is where you could get into a little bit of a trick, because you could think to yourself, was it necessary to issue debt and capitalize these costs and incur these costs to be able to afford the land? Well, the rationale here is no. And you might personally think that, sure, this should be capitalized and it makes sense to do it. However, that's where you kind of got to remember the rules a little bit as well. What I'm saying are just general rules, things that are important to keep in mind, but some things just will not be included, such as debt issuance costs. Those are going to be expensed rather than capitalized. And lastly, attorney fee, title search on land, any fees incurred, such as attorney fees, anything that you need to get that land. So that might be real estate broker fees. That as well, are we going to include that? And my answer is yes. My recommendation for these questions, these types of questions, add these all together is 1,020,000. run through them as much as possible and get familiar with what the questions will ask, because the questions will have different components, such as what you've seen here. Obviously, there's always going to be a purchase price, but there will be different components of other costs that you may or may not include. And it's by practice through these types of questions that you'll really see what gets included and what should be excluded, capitalized versus expensed. Thank you all for this question, bearing with me in this wonderful journey. Go grab a coffee, do an extra 10 questions, go do some push-ups, do anything that'll help motivate you. I will see you in the next one.